Kadishayim, Kadishayim, Bikdish Asar Shabbos Musaf-Prayer Besoiru Seichu. Kadishayim, Kadishayim, Bikdish Asar Shabbos Musaf-Prayer Besoiru Seichu. Pesach, Pesach Lohem, no yam verutzoin, liftov yach, sharei retzoin leichu. Pesach, Pesach Lohem, no yam verutzoin.
Hello everyone, this is the third in the series of Do Women Have to Daven Musaf? And today we're going to add to it, do kids from the age of 13 to 20, assuming they don't give machatzit shekel, have to daven Musaf as well. You understand that if the conclusion is going to be no, then a boy between the age of 13 and 20 can't be a Chazzan for Musaf. So, just to reiterate, the Magen Avraham quotes the Tosfos and says, in other words, Musaf is different than all the rest of the davenings. It doesn't have the added character of Rachme, of mercy, and therefore it's only in place of the Korbanot. From this perspective, it's the Maharam Shik, the Imkain, Lama Nashim Itparalot Musaf. Why do I see women davening Musaf? Hanashim enan chayavot b'tpindin v'lo b'musafin, u'lekach ein chayavot b'shkalim. Women are not obligated in the communal sacrifices, and therefore they don't have to contribute via the machatzit shekel to the communal sacrifices. From this perspective, why is it that they daven Musaf? Indeed, Rav Ovadia Yosef says, you could say about the Leviim too, that they weren't obligated in the machatzit shekel according to one point of view, but at least them, Ovdim beveit hamikdash, bechelev avodatam, tzarchim ka'et litpalel. They're part and parcel of the sacrificial service as shoarim, locking the gates, and as mishorerim, singing the shir shel yom, and therefore now they daven in place of that. But mashein kenashim, shelo haya lehem shum chelik b'korbanot. Not so women. They did not sacrifice, nor did they give the machatzit shekel for others to sacrifice. So therefore, the Amudei Or, written by a great-grandson of Tosfos Yom Tov, says, Korbanot Tzibur lo shayache rak la'anashim. The communal sacrifices, therefore, should only be the property of people that give the machatzit shekel, and that would exclude women, and perhaps kids, from the age of 13 to 20. Well, there is a point of view like this, and that's the Bisamim Rosh, a famous responsum that someone put out. I won't say his name. It's a great responsum. The problem was he lied and said this is a responsum of the Rosh. It turned out to be a forgery. It's not a responsum of the Rosh, but it's a good responsum. And many quote him, including Rabbi Akiva Eger, who says that Nashim Turot mitfilat musafin, shezot atfilah ina ba'al mishum zecher lechiyuv hakorbanot, v'isha lo hayta shokelet ve'en la chelek bekorbanot tzibur. Indeed, women are not part and parcel of giving the machatzit shekel, therefore they're not part and parcel of the communal sacrifices, including Musaf, and therefore they don't have to daven Musaf. From the world of the Chasam Sofer, the Chshut Hitorut Tshuva says the same thing. Shekol musfei hashana pturim da'atmidim u'musafim have mitzvat aseh shazman garma v'gam einam chayavim b'machatzit hashekel. And indeed, if these two positions are correct, namely, position number one, that Musaf is totally and utterly in place of the Korban. And number two, women had nothing to do with that Korban. Rav Menashe Klein, in Shut Mishneh Halachot, comes out and says, Mi she'eino bekorban Musaf eino bechiyuv u'neshama parim. Anyone that's not part of it is not part of it. And from this perspective, l'shitat poskim, לפחות מבין 20 לא נתחייבו בשקלים לקורבנות ציבור, ממילא לא נתחייבו במוספין, ואיך מצינו? לפחות מבין 20 שיתפלל בתור שליח ציבור מוסף. So if this is all correct, then how do we have people 14, 15, 16 males davening musaf? After all, they're not at all part of the communal sacrifices. And from this perspective, you understand that this would change the entire structure of our shuls, because we've never heard of such a thing. But it makes sense according to these two assumptions. From this perspective, comes along the Da'at Torah, written by Rav Shalom Shvadron, 1835 to 1911. He basically was considered the Posek Ador after the passing of Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector. And he says, if you assume these two assumptions. Kohanim, upachot mi ben esrim, de'en memashkenin otam. From 13 to 20 males, and Kohanim, that you don't take a mashkon, a collateral for not giving them a chatzita shekel. Ulechad man da'amar kohanim enam chayavim bishkalim, ech kim ken yipatru mitfilat musaf. We'll come up with a new chumrah, that when it comes to musaf, we'll say women don't have to daven, Kohanim shouldn't daven either, and if you're 13 to 20, you can also go home and eat chulent early. Well, this is exactly and precisely what the Sharei Deya paskins. The Sharei Deya Rav Chaim Yehuda Leib Litwin, his years 1840 to 1903. He was a Lithuanian Rav and Rosh Yeshiva, both in Galicia and in Lithuania. He comes along and says, indeed, lechatchila yesh lehizaher shelo lahorid betfilat hamusafin lifnei hateva pachot mi ben esrim. For all the reasons we just said, do not have a 13-year-old to a 20-year-old davening musaf for the tzibur. If he wants to daven alone, that's one thing, but he should not be the shliach tzibur for everyone. Well, I have to admit, even though these positions are indeed out there, it doesn't seem to be minhag am Yisrael. And God willing, in our next podcast, we'll deal with the other position, saying that even if your assumptions are correct, women should daven musaf as boys from 13 to 20 for various reasons. Not just because, as the Rabbi Akiva Eger says, as does the Apar Casta de Anya, a very important responsum by Rab David Sperber, who was one of the great rabbis of Romania. They both say that indeed you're right. Women are not obligated, but they've obligated themselves. Namely, your assumptions are all correct, but they have obligated themselves, just like they can obligate themselves in giving the machatzita shekel if they so choose. And the same thing is true with regard to a boy between 13 and 20. And that led Rabbi Akiva Eger to say, Kfar na'agu yitpalel kol davar v'chivu atzmam b'chol hamitzvot. They volunteered to do it. But if they're volunteers, they cannot be chazanim, because a chazan has to be someone that's as obligated as everyone in the congregation. After all, the Tosfos says in the name of the Yerushalmi and Yevamot, Daf Yudalet Amud Aleph, Ben Ir, in Omotzi Ben Krach. If someone lives in Tel Aviv, he cannot come to Yerushalayim on the 15th, which is not Purim for him, and read the Megillah for the people of Yerushalayim. Because he's not obligated that day, he's not able to fulfill the obligation for others. So if you're not obligated in Musaf, you cannot fulfill the obligation for others. Another example, Rabbi Akiva Eger says regarding someone who did not do an early Shabbos, and he's still on his cell phone, and a woman knocks on his door and says, can you please make Kiddush for me? Comes along Rabbi Akiva Eger in Simon Resh Samech Zayin, Mistapkani Macher Shelo Kibel Shabbat Yechol Lotzi Lekadesh L'mi Shekibel Shabbat. The Yesh Lomar to the Shelo Kibel Dehu Chol Etzlo Havi Ki Eino Mechuyav Badavar Kahi the Yerushalmi. It's exactly the same case. For you, it's not Shabbos. For her, it is. You're not obligated in Kiddush yet, and therefore you cannot fulfill the obligation for someone else. And from this perspective, even though he contemplates, maybe you could, because you could say, I am Mekabel Shabbos, and from that moment on, you are obligated in Kiddush. He said, Sarich Yon Ladina. Maybe not. So a 13-year-old wouldn't be able to be a chazan for someone who's 21 years old and up.
Should be